So I'm exiting the elevator and I see my two colleagues huddled together whispering. And when they notice that I'm there, they suddenly go,
That's not a good
so
sign.
of course, my immediate gut reaction is they've got to be talking about me. I'm trying to keep a lid on my emotions, but inside I'm churning and I'm trying to think about all these things. I'm going back in my mind about all the things that I must have done or I could have done that would have led to them trying to talk about me or what are they talking about me.
I get why you would think that they're talking bad about you, because I mean, it's kind of like, it doesn't feel good, right? When someone stops the conversation just because they're looking at you and it's like, oh, deer in headlights. But you're also spiraling a bit too much, aren't you?
So, in psychology, there is a phrase that says when it's hysterical, it's historical. Here's the context and information. I grew up in a family environment where what we did and what we said was a constant source of concern for my parents. Social interactions were judged by them in a way that what others said or did would then indicate not just deep character flaws in that person, but that person was then judging us in a negative way. You mean? Let me give you an example, okay? Let's take a deep dive. So I'm 12 and my parents have let me have a birthday party at home. And I've invited all of my friends. At the end of the day, everyone's gone home. I've had a really good time and I thought everyone had a really good time. And I noticed that my mom is very unhappy because she tells me that as she's serving food, one of my friends coughed. I don't remember the cough. I
Wasn't it?
honestly,
Wasn't it? Wasn't a
yeah. You know what? If it was, at least that would have been a legitimate reason. But I honestly think that the worst of it is that it was something so like nothing that I didn't even notice it. It was so innocent that I didn't even remember that it happened. But
it
to
was
her,
more
it
like
happened.
like, oh,
Dust in the yeah, it's a dust in the air, whatever, right? Maybe something caught in her throat, whatever. But to my mom, she interpreted it as this person was being passive aggressive and giving a passive aggressive cough that judged my mom's cooking, judged the serving, judged the house, judged the party. Now, because this person was judging judging us harshly, the judgment then turned around, right, on to that person and said, this person then must be a rude person, right? It became like a judgment on the person's character, right? A character flaw. This person must be rude. This person must not have a good upbringing. This person must have parents that, didn't teach them right. And there's a
that's
lot of
really
judgment going both ways.
that's
Both
really
ways.
a lot into
A
tough. Yes, yes.
You can see how when there is a pattern of constant um, judgment, it becomes where I'm nearly 50 years old and there are still times when I walk into a room and I'm afraid. I'm afraid because I don't know if something that I do or don't know or don't do or say or don't say may trigger someone to judge me harshly or think that I am judging them harshly.
It's a very funny situation, because I'm like, you're saying that, oh, you're 50 and so you're thinking about that. And yeah, what I mean, as opposed to how I would react, it's very, very different, because, I've come to that stage in life where it's mostly, nah, I can do whatever. Like, I'm happy to do whatever. And it's like, whatever you want to judge, however you want to judge it, I don't really care.
You
And,
blessed with life.
but the thing is, we love to think about it as kind of like a trauma response, right? Which, I'm not saying that it isn't, and it's very valid still. But yeah, at the same time, so this is my son, okay? I'm thinking more about my son, because in the last little while, I've noticed that it's what is happening to him as well. Because he's starting to ask questions. It's like, oh, well, people think I'm such and such. Oh, I'm doing this. Does this make people think that I'm so and so? which, coming from his family of origin, me, you think that he wouldn't have it. But developmentally, he's actually getting to that stage as well.
Right. Okay, because that's very interesting because you're talking about that there's a developmental aspect to it. Okay, I want to dig into this because that's very interesting, but we got to do the admin stuff. Okay, so I'm Faye.
I'm Melody.
Okay, good. And this is Life in the Grey, and this is a micro podcast from Mums at the Table where we try to understand what makes us tick, how it impacts our lives and relationships. And if you want to know more about who we are, check out the first episode or the show notes. Okay, so back to your son and the developmental aspect of this judgment.
So yeah, there's two folds to it, right? So okay, there's the developmental thing where basically it's linked to this theory of mind concept. So basically up to around 2 years of age, children think that the world revolves around them, as in there is no extension between who they are and who someone else is. You see it in the way they play hide and seek. They'll stand in the middle of the room and they'll go hiding. And they think because you can't see them, they can't see you. So it's like they're just this one person, right? Then they start growing up and they start realizing that there's a world that exists outside of them, that they are separate. And soon they start to behave differently because they start to notice that people are different and people notice them as well. It's a bit like, the phrase where is you go dance like nobody's watching, sing like no one is listening. So kids do that because they really don't think that anyone is watching, or they think that no one is listening. But then they stop doing that. It's like my son. He stopped playing with dolls because he discovered that his friends were laughing at him. So they start. Well, yes. We won't go into the whole topic of gender bias here because yes, I want to go there. But what I'm trying to talk about is the fact that so they developmentally they start having this theory of mind. They know they're separate. And so they stop doing what they're doing because they know people are watching, people are listening, and there is this fear of judgment. So what has happened is normal, but how you react to it, I think it's a little bit different. So for me, right, I don't want him to grow up under this weight that, the world is judging him, and I don't want him to grow up like you.
I don't want him to grow up like me either. But you'll go into that. But yes, continue, yes.
And so what I do to him, right, like I basically want him to be himself, right? And I want him to not be afraid. And so whenever he asks me, oh, what are people thinking? I acknowledge his concerns, but what I try to do is I try to remind him that people are often so worried about what other people think about themselves. They're not actually spending time judging you.
Yes, and I have heard that being told to me so many times. But here's the thing. How do you know that for sure?
Well, I don't know that for sure, but it's what I believe, and it's what I want him to believe. Just so that if he has that perspective, I'm hoping it means he'll grow up more brave and more confident instead of, cowering under the weight of perceived judgment.
And that itself, which is what I wanted to say earlier, is going to help him not grow up like me. Because you are giving him a very different upbringing. You are making the effort to equip and skill him with the tools that he needs to self-regulate, to see that the world is out there full of people who not only will not judge him, but who also want to get to know and like the authentic him. And my parents, on the other hand, did not really give me that experience. They gave me a very different experience. So that is giving him a very different foundation.
Curious though, what is judgment criteria that your parents have?
I don't think it was so much as like the things that they had a criteria on. Like it wasn't like, oh, they picked on clothes or they picked on grades, stuff like that. It was just that the pattern of it, the consistent, constant pattern of just feeling judged and judging others.
Which is, it's a pretty harsh standard to live up to, isn't it? I mean, that doesn't it mean that you're always thinking that you're like never good enough?
Yeah. The belief that gets ingrained is that inevitably people will judge you for not being good enough.
You asked me earlier, where is the proof in the statement that I give my son, right? That people are more concerned about being judged themselves. And yes, I do not have solid proof. But you don't either. Your parents don't either. They don't have solid proof that people are talking about you, thinking about you, judging you negatively. So you prove, I don't have proof, is another grade.
Exactly. And you have just come to the point in just a few minutes that took me years of therapy to get through. That is the grade. And that is one of the tools that I use to help me to cope when the feelings of judgment or rejection or being othered surface. Because those feelings are from my past, right? It's gonna surface when triggers happen. But what I do with them, that's my present. That's my healing. That's my wise mind. So when these feelings come up, I don't suppress, I don't deny, I don't judge them. I identify them, but also I hold space for the fact that there is gray. I don't have proof for one or the other, just like you said. So if I'm going to write the story of all of the negative stories, then I also have to give equal opportunity to write the other side of the story and then ask myself, what's the gray here? And can I hold space for the gray and say, I'm not going to run away with either story until more context and information surfaces. Until I know something is a fact, I have to ask myself, what am I assuming here? And what am I extrapolating? And what am I inferring? Because sometimes the feelings that come up might tell me really a boundary was crossed. But sometimes the feelings that come up just come up because the situation looks similar to what happened in the past.
Funny though, like, how we react differently to gray. Like, your parents, I'm a parent, and how different the reaction is. So I guess what I'm curious about, right, is what are the things that your parents did that, perhaps I should avoid so that, for people who do not want children to grow up like you, like what should we avoid?
I wouldn't speak about what people should avoid, but I can just share about what happened for me. I cannot emphasize enough about consistent pattern. Because we're not talking about one isolated incident of like, oh, my mom maybe like made a judgment on someone. But we're talking about a consistent pattern of an unspoken pressure to always perform, to always look right, look good. And even when we messed up, there was a right way to mess up. There was supposed to be a right way to mess up. The way that they interpreted the things that people said or did, there was always this negativity around it.
Which is so sad. Like, I mean, it's such an awful way of living, and well, obviously harmful to children. It reminds me of this thing that I try to tell my kid. Whenever he does have his, glass half empty negative moments, right? And it's like, you can choose to be happy. It's not about the feelings. It's not about choosing to feel happy, but it's about choosing to have that perspective in which that you can therefore be positive and be happy. Happiness can be a choice.
And that is so true because it is a skill that you can develop. I mean, look at me, I'm almost 50 and I am developing the skill, right? To mindfully go through my emotions. That way, if really sometimes a boundary was crossed, now I'm mindfully, intentionally going to address it in a healthy way. Or if a boundary wasn't crossed, I know I can regulate myself and then protect the relationships that I have, right? And, treat the relationships that I have with the love and the kindness that I want to treat them with. So it is a skill that you can develop, and it's never too late. It's never, never too late.
Okay, I'm going to pull in the big guns now, right? Because we're just talking, we don't really have any we've got psychological, we've got interest in psychology, but we don't have the qualifications per se. So I'm going to pull in the big guns now. I talked to Dr. Katie Shelsos. She's a clinical psychologist. And she actually did share with me 4 simple things that parents can do to help children who are suffering under the weight of judgment. So I've converted it into an article, and it's on the Moms at the Table website, which I will share in the show notes. And so there's our stories, but there's also the big guns. Now, it's also good, right, to know that, what we talk about, there's actually research-backed evidence.
Okay, so I think we get to the point where we're going to wrap up here. And so just to conclude, we're here to share stories. Okay, we're not here to give advice, and we definitely are not anybody's therapist here. But if you enjoyed our chat today, please do give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and click the bell icon so that you don't miss an episode. But if you do just prefer the audio, you can still find us on your favorite podcast app. And all you have to do is just search for Life in the Grey. That's grey with an E. And we do love to keep the conversation going. So please leave a comment below or reach out to us on any of our social channels. So thanks for tuning in. Yeah.